Eleanor Moore never imagined that saving a life would change hers forever, especially not the life of the man who'd spent 8 months making hers miserable. Marcus Cole was a millionaire with a restaurant empire and a heart full of prejudice, the kind of boss who crushed spirits with a glance and destroyed confidence with a word. But when his heart stopped beating on a crowded restaurant floor, it was Eleanor, the waitress he'd humiliated just moments before, who refused to let him die. What Marcus didn't know was that the hands saving his life belonged to the woman he'd treated as invisible, worthless, beneath him. And what Eleanor didn't know was that this one act of grace would force a powerful man to face the ugliest parts of himself, and maybe, just maybe, discover what it means to truly change. If you're ready to see how a single moment can rewrite two destinies, subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. The dinner rush was coming. Eleanor Moore could feel it in the air, that tight, buzzing pressure that settled over the restaurant every Friday evening. She tied her apron strings a little tighter and checked her station one more time. Water pitchers full, silverware rolled, napkins stacked. Everything had to be perfect. She'd learned that lesson the hard way during her first month at Kohl's. Marcus Cole didn't tolerate mistakes. He didn't yell or throw things like some restaurant owners she'd heard about. He just looked at you with those dark, measuring eyes and said something cutting in that smooth voice of his, something that made you feel small. Ellie glanced at the clock above the bar. 6:15. Marcus would walk through that kitchen door any minute now. She smoothed down her black shirt and took a breath. Another shift, another night of keeping her head down and doing her job. That was all she had to do. Serve the food, smile at the customers, stay invisible. It had been working for 8 months now. The kitchen doors swung open and Marcus stepped onto the dining floor. He moved like he owned the place, which of course he did. Tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ellie made in 3 months. His dark skin gleamed under the warm restaurant lights. Everything about him looked expensive, controlled, untouchable. He scanned the room with those sharp eyes, taking in every detail. His gaze passed over Ellie without stopping. It usually did. Eleanor. His voice carried across the dining room, not loud but commanding enough that everyone heard it. She looked up. Yes, sir? Table 6 needs water. They've been sitting there for 2 minutes. Ellie glanced at table 6. An older couple who'd just sat down, still looking at their menus. I was just heading over. Then head over now, not when you're ready. Now. Heat crept up her neck, but she kept her face neutral. Yes, sir. She grabbed a water pitcher and walked to table 6, feeling Marcus's eyes on her back. The couple smiled at her warmly, completely unaware of what had just happened. She poured their water with steady hands and took their drink orders, then moved to the next table. Then the next. By 7 o'clock, the restaurant was packed. Every table full, the bar crowded with people waiting for seats. The noise level rose. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses and silverware. Ellie moved through it all like she'd been trained to do, carrying trays, refilling drinks, remembering orders without writing them down. She was good at her job. She knew that. But Marcus never seemed to notice. Tom Gallagher caught her eye from the kitchen window. The line cook raised his eyebrows in a silent question. You okay? She gave him a quick nod. Tom had worked at Kohl's longer than anyone. He'd seen Marcus tear through 3 managers and at least a dozen servers. He was one of the few people who bothered to check on Ellie when things got rough. Eleanor, Marcus's voice again, closer this time. Come here. She finished setting down a basket of bread and walked over to where he stood near the bar. He didn't look at her directly, just kept his eyes on the dining room. Table 12, he said. The gentleman ordered his steak medium rare. You brought it out medium well. Ellie's stomach dropped. She'd been careful. She'd checked the ticket twice. Sir, I brought out exactly what the kitchen. Are you arguing with me? No, sir. I'm explaining that I don't need explanations. His tone was flat, cold. I need you to fix it, and try not to mess up the replacement. She stood there for a moment, her hands clenched at her sides. The people at the nearest tables were watching now, listening. Her face burned. Yes, sir, she said quietly. She walked back to the kitchen, her throat tight. Tom saw her coming and frowned. What happened? Table 12's steak needs to be replaced. Her voice came out steady somehow. She was proud of that. Marcus said I brought it out wrong. Tom's jaw tensed. He pulled the ticket from the rail and studied it. You brought out exactly what we sent. Medium rare, just like the order said. It doesn't matter. Ellie pushed her hair back from her face. Just make another one, please. Tom muttered something under his breath but turned back to the grill. Ellie waited, watching the flames, trying to steady herself. She'd had plenty of jobs before this one. Retail, fast food, cleaning houses. They'd all been hard in their own ways. But something about working for Marcus Cole felt different, heavier. Maybe it was the way he looked through her instead of at her. Like she wasn't quite real, like she was just a uniform moving through his restaurant. Or maybe it was the way he saved his sharpest words for her. She'd noticed it after the first few weeks. He corrected everyone. That was just his style. But with her, there was an edge. A coldness that went beyond normal boss behavior. Linda Pierce, the dining manager, had told her not to take it personally. Marcus is hard on everyone, she'd said, not quite meeting Ellie's eyes. He just has high standards. But Ellie had noticed that Linda never got dressed down in front of customers. Neither did the bartender, Chris, or any of the other servers. Just her. She'd tried to figure out why. She showed up on time, did her work, stayed professional, but nothing seemed to change Marcus's attitude toward her. Tom slid the new steak across the window. Here, tell him it's perfect. Thanks. Ellie picked up the plate and carried it back through the dining room. She set it in front of the customer at table 12 with an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry about the wait, sir. I hope this is cooked exactly how you wanted. The man cut into it and nodded. That's perfect. Thank you, sweetheart. She felt a tiny bit of tension leave her shoulders. At least the customer was happy. It was something. The rest of the dinner rush blurred together. More tables, more orders, more of Marcus watching her from across the room with that unreadable expression. By 9 o'clock, Ellie's feet ached and her lower back throbbed, but the crowd had finally started to thin. She was clearing plates from a table near the window when she heard Marcus's voice rise slightly, not quite a shout, but louder than usual, sharper. How many times do I have to explain this? Ellie glanced over. Marcus stood near the host stand, talking to Sarah, one of the newer servers. The young woman's face had gone pale. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, I thought... You thought wrong. Marcus's voice cut through the restaurant like a blade. When I tell you to seat people at specific tables, I don't mean suggest it. I mean do it. Are you capable of following simple instructions? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She nodded quickly, not trusting her voice. Marcus turned away from her dismissively and headed toward the bar. His gaze swept over the dining room again and stopped on Ellie. She looked away quickly, but not quickly enough. Eleanor! He changed direction and walked toward her. A word. Her pulse jumped. She set down the plates she was holding and followed him to a quieter corner near the kitchen doors. He stood with his arms crossed, looking down at her. I've been watching your section tonight, he said. Your service is slow, sloppy. Ellie blinked. That wasn't true. She knew it wasn't true. Sir, I've kept up with every table. No one's complained. I'm complaining. His voice was low but hard. This is my restaurant, my reputation. When you work here, you represent me. And right now, you're not representing me well. Something hot and sharp twisted in her chest. She dealt with his criticism all night, all week, all 8 months. Usually she could swallow it down and keep going. But right now, standing here with him looking at her like she was dirt on his expensive shoes, something inside her cracked, just a little. I'm doing my best, she said quietly. Your best isn't good enough. The words hung in the air between them. Cold, final. Ellie opened her mouth to respond, though she didn't know what she could possibly say. When Marcus's expression changed, his eyes went unfocused for a second. He blinked hard like he was trying to clear his vision. Sir, Ellie said. Marcus put a hand on the wall to steady himself. His breathing had changed, faster, shallower. Mr. Cole? He looked at her, and for just a second, she saw something in his face that she'd never seen before. Confusion. Fear. Then he clutched his chest. It happened so fast. One moment he was standing there, and the next he was falling. Ellie lunged forward and caught him under the arms, trying to ease him down instead of letting him crash to the floor. He was heavy, much heavier than she'd expected, but she managed to lower him enough that he didn't hit his head. Someone call 911, she shouted. Her voice came out strong and clear, cutting through the sudden shocked silence in the restaurant. Call 911 right now. People were standing up from their tables. Someone screamed. But Ellie didn't look at any of them. She focused on Marcus, kneeling beside him on the hardwood floor. His eyes were half closed. His breathing came in short, painful gasps. His hand was still pressed against his chest. "Stay with me," Ellie said, her voice suddenly calm, steadier than she felt. "Help is coming. Just stay with me, okay?" She'd taken a first aid course years ago when she'd worked at a summer camp. She tried to remember what they'd taught her about heart attacks. Keep the person calm, loosen tight clothing, monitor breathing. She reached for Marcus's tie and loosened it, then unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. His skin was covered in cold sweat. "Marcus," she used his first name without thinking. "Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." His fingers twitched against hers, a weak squeeze, but it was something. "Good. That's good." She kept her voice steady. "Ambulance is coming. You're going to be okay." She had no idea if that was true, but she said it anyway. Tom appeared beside her, his face white. "Oh my God, is he—" "He's breathing," Ellie said. "Where's the ambulance?" "Sarah called. They said 5 minutes." 5 minutes felt like forever. The restaurant had gone completely silent now. All the customers watched from their tables, frozen. Some had their phones out. Linda Pierce stood near the bar, her hands over her mouth. Ellie looked down at Marcus. His eyes found hers, really looked at her for maybe the first time since she'd started working here. There was fear in them, pain, and something else she couldn't quite name. "You're okay," she said again, even though she didn't know if she was lying. "I've got you." His lips moved, but no sound came out. "Don't try to talk. Just breathe, in and out, nice and slow." She kept her hand on his shoulder, feeling his rapid heartbeat through his shirt. "The paramedics are almost here." It felt like an hour passed, but it was probably only 3 or 4 minutes before she heard the sirens. Then the paramedics were there, moving her aside gently but firmly, taking over with practiced efficiency. "What happened?" one of them asked. "He grabbed his chest and collapsed," Ellie said. "He's been conscious the whole time, breathing but struggling." "Good. You did good." The paramedic, a woman with kind eyes, glanced at her. "You his wife? Family?" "No, I work here." "Can you ride with us? We might need more information, and he's in no shape to talk right now." Ellie hesitated for only a second. Then she nodded. They loaded Marcus onto a stretcher, moving quickly but carefully. Ellie followed them out to the ambulance, barely aware of the crowd that had gathered on the sidewalk outside. The whole town would be talking about this by morning. The ambulance doors closed behind her, and suddenly it was just her, Marcus, and the 2 paramedics in the small space. The sirens started up again, loud and urgent. Marcus's eyes were closed now. His face had gone gray. The female paramedic worked over him, checking vitals, hooking up monitors. Numbers and beeping sounds filled the small space. "Is he going to be okay?" Ellie asked. "We're doing everything we can," the paramedic said without looking up. "What's his name?" "Marcus Cole." "Marcus, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." His hand moved weakly. "Good. We're taking you to St. Catherine's. Hang in there." Ellie pressed herself against the wall of the ambulance, trying to stay out of the way. She watched Marcus's chest rise and fall, rise and fall. Such a simple thing, breathing, something you never thought about until it became difficult. She thought about what he'd said to her just minutes before this happened. "Your best isn't good enough." Even now, even watching him fight for every breath, those words stung. But she pushed the feeling down. Whatever Marcus Cole had said to her, whatever he thought of her, he was a human being. And right now, he needed help. So she'd helped him. That was all there was to it. The ambulance pulled up to the emergency entrance and chaos erupted again. Doctors and nurses swarmed the stretcher. Medical terms she didn't understand flew back and forth. Someone guided her to a waiting room and told her to sit. She sat. The waiting room was too bright. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A TV in the corner played the news with the sound turned low. A few other people scattered across the plastic chairs, all of them looking tired and worried. Ellie stared at her hands. They were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. She'd been so calm during the emergency, focused. But now, sitting still with nothing to do, the fear rushed in. What if Marcus died? The thought hit her hard. She didn't like the man. He'd made her life miserable for 8 months. But she didn't want him to die. She didn't want anyone to die. She pressed her palms together and closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. "Miss?" She looked up. A nurse stood there with a clipboard. "You came in with Marcus Cole?" "Yes." "We're going to need some information. Are you family?" "No, I'm his employee." The nurse frowned slightly. "Is there family we can contact?" Ellie thought for a moment. His aunt, Ruth Cole. "I think she lives here in town, but I don't have her number." "We'll track her down. Can you tell me what happened, what you saw?" Ellie walked the nurse through it. The collapse, his symptoms, the timeline as best as she could remember it. The nurse wrote it all down carefully. "You did the right things," the nurse said when Ellie finished. "Keeping him calm, loosening his clothing, that might have made a real difference." "Is he going to be okay?" "The doctors are with him now. That's all I can tell you right now." The nurse gave her a sympathetic look. "It might be a long wait. You don't have to stay if you don't want to." "I'll stay," Ellie said. She didn't really know why, but it felt wrong to leave. The nurse nodded and walked away. Ellie leaned back in the uncomfortable plastic chair and stared at the wall. At some point, Tom showed up with a cup of coffee for her and news from the restaurant. "Linda closed up early," he said, sitting down beside her. "Sent everyone home. The whole place is shook." "Yeah." Ellie wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I bet. How's he doing?" "I don't know. They won't tell me much since I'm not family." Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You saved his life, you know. If you hadn't caught him, if you hadn't kept him calm until the paramedics got there, anyone would have done the same thing. Maybe, but you're the one who did it." Tom looked at her seriously. "That takes guts, Ellie, especially after how he's treated you." She didn't say anything. What was there to say? Tom stayed for another 20 minutes, then had to leave to check on his wife. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "I mean it." "Thanks, Tom." She was alone again. The TV droned on. People came and went from the waiting room, a woman with a crying baby, an elderly man holding his arm, life and emergencies, all mixing together in this bright, sterile space. Around 11:30, the automatic doors opened and a woman walked in. She was tall and elegant, probably in her late 50s, with dark skin and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a burgundy dress and carried a designer purse. Everything about her spoke of quiet dignity and strength. She walked straight to the nurse's station. "I'm here for Marcus Cole. I'm his aunt, Ruth Cole." The nurse said something Ellie couldn't hear. Ruth's face went tight with worry. Ellie stood up without really deciding to. "Mrs. Cole?" Ruth turned. Her eyes swept over Ellie, taking in the wrinkled work shirt, the name tag, the exhaustion written all over her face. "Yes?" "I'm Eleanor Moore. I work at the restaurant. I was with Marcus when it happened." Ruth's expression softened slightly. She walked over. "You rode in the ambulance with him?" "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you." Ruth's voice was warm, genuine. "Thank you for staying with him." "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Ruth shook her head. "Not anyone. Not after—" She trailed off, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Not after the way my nephew can be." Ellie didn't know how to respond to that, so she stayed quiet. A doctor emerged from the double doors. Ruth Cole?" "That's me." Ruth moved quickly, and Ellie followed, not sure if she should, but unable to stop herself. The doctor was middle-aged, with tired eyes and steady hands. "I'm Dr. Reyes. Your nephew is stable. We believe he had a cardiac event, possibly a heart attack, though we're still running tests. We've got him on medication and oxygen. He's resting now." Ruth closed her eyes briefly. "Can I see him?" "In a little while. We want to keep monitoring him closely for the next few hours." Dr. Reyes glanced at Ellie. "You're the one who was with him when it happened?" "Yes, sir." "You did well. Your quick response probably saved his life." He looked back at Ruth. "Someone will come get you when you can see him. Probably another hour or so." After the doctor left, Ruth sank into one of the waiting room chairs. Ellie sat down a few seats away, giving her space. They sat in silence for several minutes. Then Ruth spoke, her voice quiet. "How long have you worked for Marcus?" 8 months. "And he treats you poorly?" It wasn't a question. Ellie looked at Ruth, surprised by the directness. "He's my boss," she said carefully. "That's not an answer." Ellie studied the older woman's face. There was no judgment there, just a kind of sad understanding. He's harder on me than the others, Ellie admitted. I don't really know why. Ruth sighed. I do. Ellie waited, but Ruth didn't elaborate. They fell back into silence, but it felt less awkward now, more like two people keeping vigil together. More time passed. Midnight came and went. Finally, around 1 a.m, a nurse appeared. Mrs. Cole, you can see him now, just for a few minutes. Ruth stood. She looked at Ellie. Come with me. Oh, I shouldn't. Please. Ruth's voice was gentle but firm. He should see you. Ellie followed her through the double doors, down a hallway that smelled of antiseptic and floor polish. They stopped at a room near the end. The door was partially open. Marcus lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller somehow than he did in his restaurant. The sharp edges of him seemed dulled. An IV ran into his arm. Monitors beeped softly beside the bed. His eyes were closed. Ruth walked to his bedside and took his hand. Marcus. His eyes opened slowly, confused at first, then focusing on his aunt's face. Ruth. His voice was rough, weak. I'm here, honey. His gaze shifted past her and landed on Ellie, standing awkwardly near the door. For a long moment, he just stared at her. She saw his throat work as he swallowed. You... He struggled to get the words out. You stayed. Someone had to, Ellie said softly. Ruth. Marcus's eyes never left Ellie's face. What happened? Tell me exactly what happened. Ruth explained, her voice steady and clear. She told him about the collapse, about Ellie catching him before he hit the floor, about her quick thinking and calm presence, about her riding in the ambulance and staying at the hospital even though she had no reason to. By the time Ruth finished, something had changed in Marcus's expression. The confusion was still there, but now there was something else, something that looked almost like shock. You saved my life. He said it like he was trying to understand a foreign language. Ellie shifted uncomfortably. The paramedics saved your life. I just helped until they got there. No. His voice was getting stronger now, more certain. No, they said if you hadn't kept me calm, if you hadn't acted so fast. He closed his eyes briefly. You saved my life. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them could quite grasp yet. You should rest, Ruth said gently. We'll be here. Ellie. Marcus opened his eyes again, looking right at her, using her name for the first time, her real name, not Eleanor, in that dismissive tone. Thank you. The simplicity of it nearly broke her. After everything, after 8 months of being treated like she was invisible, after being told her best wasn't good enough just minutes before his heart gave out, after all of that, 2 simple words. You're welcome, she heard herself say. A nurse appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry, but he really needs to rest now. You can come back in the morning. Ruth squeezed Marcus's hand once more and stepped back. Ellie turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Wait. She looked back. Marcus's face had changed. The arrogance was gone. The coldness. Right now, he just looked like a man who'd seen death and wasn't sure what to do with the fact that he was still breathing. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. For earlier. For what I said. Ellie didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded and walked out of the room. Ruth followed her into the hallway. They stood there in the too bright fluorescent light, both of them processing what had just happened. You don't have to come back to the restaurant, Ruth said quietly. After tonight, no one would blame you if you looked for another job. I know. But if you do come back, Ruth met her eyes. Things are going to be different. They have to be. Mrs. Cole, Ruth, please call me Ruth. Ruth, Ellie took a shaky breath. I'm going to head home now. I'm glad he's okay. Eleanor. Ruth touched her arm gently. What you did tonight, that was grace. Real grace. Don't forget that. Ellie didn't know what to say to that either, so she just nodded again and walked away. The automatic doors slid open, and she stepped out into the cool night air. The parking lot was quiet. She realized she didn't have her car. It was still at the restaurant. She'd have to call someone to pick her up, but first, she just stood there, breathing in the night and trying to make sense of what had just happened. Marcus Cole, the man who'd made her life miserable, who'd looked through her like she was invisible, who'd told her she wasn't good enough, was alive because of her. And now he'd apologized. She didn't know what came next, didn't know if one apology could erase 8 months of casual cruelty, didn't know if she even wanted to find out. But as she stood there in the empty parking lot, under the stars and the sterile glow of the hospital lights, one thing was certain. Everything had changed. Ellie called Tom from the hospital parking lot. He picked her up 20 minutes later, asking questions she was too tired to answer properly. When he dropped her off at her apartment building, she thanked him and promised she was okay. She wasn't sure if that was true. Her apartment was small and quiet. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, second-hand furniture that had seen better days. But it was hers. Clean. Safe. The rent was manageable as long as she kept her job at Kohl's. She kicked off her shoes and sank onto the couch without bothering to turn on the lights. The digital clock on the microwave said 2:17 a.m. She should sleep. She had to be back at the restaurant tomorrow, later today, actually. But her mind wouldn't settle. She kept seeing Marcus's face, the fear in his eyes when he grabbed his chest, the confusion when he woke up and realized she'd stayed, the way he'd said her name, Ellie, not Eleanor in that cold, dismissive tone, just Ellie, and that apology. She didn't know what to do with any of it. Finally, around 3, she forced herself to get ready for bed. But sleep came in fits and starts, full of strange dreams about falling and catching people who didn't want to be caught. Her alarm went off at 10, Saturday. Normally her day off, but Linda had called earlier and left a voicemail. The restaurant was opening for lunch service. They needed all hands on deck, especially with Marcus in the hospital. Ellie dragged herself out of bed and into the shower. The hot water helped a little. She dressed carefully, black pants, black shirt, hair pulled back, professional, neutral, invisible, old habits. The restaurant looked normal when she arrived. Customers wouldn't know anything had happened here last night. Linda had clearly had the staff clean thoroughly. No sign of the chaos. No sign that a man had nearly died on this floor. Tom was already in the kitchen, prepping for lunch. He looked up when Ellie walked in. "Hey, you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "Well, I'm upright and functional. That's close enough." She tied her apron on. "What's the news?" "Linda got a call from Ruth this morning. Marcus is stable. They're keeping him for observation, but the doctors think he'll be okay." Tom wiped down his station. "She also said something about you being there all night." "Not all night, just until around 1. "Still," Tom gave her a meaningful look. "That was good of you." Ellie didn't want to talk about it. "Where's Linda?" "In the office. She wants to see you before service starts." Of course she did. Ellie found Linda at Marcus's desk, going through paperwork with a tight expression. The dining manager looked up when Ellie knocked on the doorframe. "Eleanor, come in, close the door." Ellie did, her stomach tightening. Linda had never been warm toward her, but she'd never been outright hostile either. She just looked away a lot, stayed neutral, like she didn't want to see what was happening. "I wanted to thank you," Linda said, though her tone didn't sound particularly grateful. "For what you did last night." That was quick thinking. Anyone would have, "Yes, I've heard that line already." Linda set down her pen. "Ruth called this morning. She told me what happened at the hospital, that Marcus apologized to you." Ellie waited. There was clearly more coming. "I want you to understand something." Linda leaned back in the chair. "Marcus is under a tremendous amount of stress right now. The doctor said his heart attack was likely brought on by overwork and anxiety. He's not himself. Whatever he said to you last night in that hospital room, he was emotional and vulnerable. I understand that." "Do you?" Linda's eyes were hard. "Because I don't want you getting ideas, thinking this changes anything. Marcus runs this restaurant a certain way. He has expectations. When he comes back, things will return to normal." Something cold settled in Ellie's chest. Normal. Yes? Normal. Linda picked up her pen again. "I'm sure you understand." Ellie understood perfectly. Linda was telling her not to expect the apology to mean anything, not to expect Marcus to actually change, not to expect anything at all except more of the same treatment she'd endured for 8 months. "Is that all?" Ellie asked quietly. "That's all? You can start setting up your section." Ellie left the office and went back to the dining room. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear or exhaustion. It was anger. She'd saved Marcus's life. She'd stayed at the hospital when she could have just gone home. She'd shown him grace, that's what Ruth had called it, when he'd given her nothing but cruelty. And Linda's response was to warn her not to expect anything to change. Maybe Linda was right. Maybe people didn't change. Maybe Marcus would come back and everything would go right back to how it was. But something in Ellie rebelled against that idea. Something that had been quiet and compliant for 8 months suddenly wanted to push back. She shook her head and focused on her work. Customers would be arriving soon. She had a job to do. The lunch shift passed in a blur. Everyone was talking about what had happened. Customers, staff, everyone. Ellie heard the story retold a dozen different ways, getting more dramatic with each telling. By the third table, she was apparently a nurse who'd performed CPR and shocked Marcus's heart back to life with a defibrillator. "I just caught him and kept him calm," she told anyone who asked. "That's all." But people wanted a bigger story, a hero, something exciting to talk about. By 3 o'clock, Ellie was exhausted again. She'd barely slept, and the emotional weight of the last 24 hours was catching up with her. She was clearing plates from a table when she heard the front door open. Ruth Cole walked in, elegant as ever in a cream-colored blouse and navy slacks. She spotted Ellie immediately and walked over. "Eleanor, do you have a moment?" Linda appeared from nowhere. "Mrs. Cole, how is Marcus? We've all been so worried." "He's doing better, thank you." Ruth's voice was polite but cool. "I'd like to speak with Eleanor privately, if that's all right." Linda's smile faltered. "Of course. Eleanor, take your break." Ruth guided Ellie to a quiet corner booth, away from the other customers. They sat across from each other, and Ruth folded her hands on the table. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm okay." "Truly?" The kindness in Ruth's voice caught Ellie off guard. She felt her throat tighten. "It's been a long day." "I imagine so." Ruth studied her for a moment. "Marcus wants to see you." Ellie blinked. "What?" "He's been asking for you since this morning. He wants to thank you properly, talk to you." Ruth's expression was difficult to read. "I told him I'd ask if you were willing to visit." I don't know." "You don't have to," Ruth said quickly. "I want you to know that. You've done more than enough already. But if you're willing, I think it would mean a great deal to him." Ellie looked down at her hands. She didn't know what she wanted. Part of her was curious. What could Marcus possibly have to say to her? Another part of her just wanted to forget last night ever happened and go back to her quiet, invisible life. But she'd never been good at saying no when someone asked for help. "When?" she heard herself ask. "Visiting hours are until 8 tonight. Come whenever you're ready." Ruth reached across the table and squeezed Ellie's hand. "Thank you, dear, for everything." After Ruth left, Ellie finished her shift in a daze. Tom caught her before she left. "You going to see him?" "I think so." "Want me to come with you?" She smiled despite everything. "No, but thank you." "Call me if you need anything. I mean it." "I will." Ellie went home first. She changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a simple blue sweater, pulled her hair out of its ponytail, and let it fall around her shoulders. She didn't know why she was making an effort. Maybe because showing up to a hospital in her work uniform felt wrong somehow. Too much like going there as his employee instead of as a person. The drive to St. Catherine's took 15 minutes. Ellie's hands were tight on the steering wheel the whole way. She almost turned around twice, but she didn't. The nurse at the front desk directed her to Marcus's room, a different one than last night, in a regular ward instead of the emergency section. Ellie walked down the corridor slowly, her heart beating too fast. The door was open. She knocked softly on the frame. Come in," Marcus's voice, stronger than last night but still not quite right. She stepped inside. He was sitting up in bed looking more alert. The monitors were still there, the IV still connected to his arm, but his color was better. His eyes were clear. Those eyes found hers immediately. "Ellie," he said her name like he was testing it out, making sure he had it right. "You came. Ruth said you wanted to see me." I do." He gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Please, sit." She sat, keeping her purse in her lap like a shield. They looked at each other for a long moment, neither quite knowing where to start. Finally, Marcus spoke. "I've been lying here all day trying to figure out what to say to you. I've practiced it a dozen times, But now that you're here, he shook his head. I don't know where to begin. You don't have to say anything. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. I do because what I said to you last night, right before this happened, that was unforgivable. Marcus, please, let me finish. He took a careful breath. I told you your best wasn't good enough. I humiliated you in front of customers, and that wasn't the first time. I've been doing that to you since the day you started working for me. Ellie said nothing. What could she say? It was all true. I've been lying here thinking about why. Marcus looked down at his hands. Why I treated you that way. And I don't have a good answer. I don't have any answer except, he paused, struggling, except that I'm a man who learned some very ugly things from my father, things I told myself I'd left behind, but I didn't. I just buried them. The room felt very small suddenly, very quiet. Ruth told me something this morning, Marcus continued. She said you saved my life, and not just by catching me when I fell. She said the paramedics told her that if you hadn't kept me calm, if you hadn't known what to do, I might not have made it to the hospital. The paramedics did the real work. Stop. He looked up at her. Stop deflecting. Stop making yourself smaller. You saved my life, Ellie. You. The woman I just finished tearing down. The woman I've been cruel to for 8 months. You saved me anyway. Tears pricked at Ellie's eyes. She blinked them back. Why? Marcus asked. Why did you do that? Because you needed help. It's more than that. No. Ellie's voice was quiet but steady. It's not. You were in trouble. I helped. That's what people do. That's what good people do. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. And I haven't been good. Not to you, not to anyone. They sat in silence for a moment. Somewhere down the hall, a phone was ringing. Soft voices murmured, normal hospital sounds. I don't know how to fix this, Marcus said finally. I don't know how to make up for the way I've treated you, but I want to try. Ellie looked at him carefully, really looked at him. Without the expensive suits and the commanding presence. He looked ordinary, vulnerable, human. Why? She asked. What? Why do you want to try? Because you feel guilty? Because I saved your life and now you think you owe me something? Marcus considered the question seriously. Maybe that's part of it, but mostly. He met her eyes. Mostly because lying here, thinking I might die, the thing I regretted most was how I'd treated you. That's not the man I want to be. Ellie's chest felt tight. People don't change overnight, Marcus. I know. One apology doesn't erase 8 months of whatever that was. I know that too. So what do you want from me? Nothing. The answer came quick and certain. I want nothing from you except maybe a chance to do better, to be better. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to like me. I'm just asking if you'll let me try. Ellie studied his face. She'd gotten good at reading people over the years. You had to when you worked service jobs. You learned to spot the demanding customers, the kind ones, the ones who'd leave a good tip and the ones who wouldn't. Right now, Marcus looked sincere, scared even, like he was standing on the edge of something and didn't know if he was about to fall or fly. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? You can try. But Marcus, she leaned forward slightly. If things go back to how they were, I'm done. I won't stay and take more of that. I can't. You shouldn't have to. He nodded. Fair enough. A nurse came in then to check his vitals, breaking the tension. Ellie stood up, ready to leave, but Marcus spoke again. Will you come back? Tomorrow, maybe. She hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea. Please. Not as my employee. Just as someone I'd like to talk to. Get to know. Properly this time. There was something almost boyish in the request, hopeful and uncertain at the same time. I'll think about it, Ellie said. That's all I can ask. She left the room and walked back through the hospital corridors, her mind spinning. She didn't know what she'd just agreed to, didn't know if Marcus was genuine or if this was just guilt talking, didn't know if people could really change or if she was setting herself up for more hurt. But as she drove home, through the darkening evening, she realized something. For the first time in 8 months, Marcus Cole had seen her, really seen her, not as an employee or a uniform or someone to push around, but as a person. Maybe that was worth something. Sunday morning came too early. Ellie woke to her phone buzzing with text messages, Tom checking in, Sarah from the restaurant asking if the rumors were true, even Linda with a terse message about the schedule for next week. She ignored most of them and made coffee, sat at her small kitchen table and tried to decide what to do about Marcus's request. She didn't have to go back to the hospital. Nobody could make her. She'd done her good deed. She'd saved his life. That was enough. But curiosity gnawed at her. What would they even talk about? What did she have in common with a millionaire restaurant owner who'd spent 8 months making her miserable? Her phone rang. Ruth's name on the screen. Hello? Eleanor, I hope I'm not calling too early. No, it's fine. I was up. Good. Ruth's voice was warm. I wanted to thank you again for visiting Marcus yesterday. It meant more to him than I can say. He seemed different. He is different. Or at least, he's trying to be. Ruth paused. I know this is complicated. I know you have every reason to walk away and never look back. But I want you to know something about my nephew. Ellie waited. Marcus's father, my brother, was a hard man. Successful, intelligent, driven, but hard. And he had some very ugly views about people who didn't look like him or come from his background. Marcus spent his whole childhood hearing those views, learning them. By the time he was a teenager, those ideas were just part of how he saw the world. Ellie's stomach tightened. I tried to talk to my brother, Ruth continued, tried to show Marcus a different way. But I was just the aunt. I didn't have the same influence. And then my brother died when Marcus was 22. Suddenly all that poison he'd learned was the only thing Marcus had left of his father. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand where he's coming from, not to excuse it. There is no excuse. But to help you see that changing this part of himself, it's going to be hard for him. It's going to mean unlearning things that are buried deep. Ruth's voice softened. But I've seen him different in the last 2 days. I've seen him actually look at his behavior and be ashamed of it. That's new. That's real. And I think you're the reason why. I just saved his life. You did more than that. You showed him grace when he deserved judgment. You gave him something he'd never given you, basic human kindness, and now he's trying to figure out how to be the kind of man who deserves that kindness. Ellie closed her eyes. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, Ruth. You're stronger than you know. You've survived 8 months of his cruelty with your dignity intact. That takes remarkable strength. Ruth paused. But you don't owe him anything, Eleanor. Please remember that. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, and so will Marcus, whether he admits it or not. After they hung up, Ellie sat in her quiet kitchen for a long time. The coffee went cold. The sun rose higher outside her window. Finally, she stood up and got dressed. She was going back to the hospital, not because she owed Marcus anything, not because she'd been convinced by Ruth's story, but because deep down, under all her exhaustion and anger and confusion, she wanted to believe people could change. She wanted to believe that grace meant something, that kindness wasn't wasted. Maybe that made her foolish. Maybe she was setting herself up to be hurt again. But maybe, just maybe, it made her brave. Marcus was awake when she arrived. He looked surprised to see her. You came back. I said I'd think about it. She sat in the same chair as yesterday. I thought about it. A small smile crossed his face, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. I'm glad. They talked for an hour. Real conversation this time, not the stilted formality of boss and employee. He asked her questions, where she was from, how she'd ended up in this town, what she wanted to do with her life, and he actually listened to her answers. She learned things, too, that he'd opened the restaurant 5 years ago with money from his father's estate, that he worked 70-hour weeks and barely saw his aunt, that he'd been engaged once but it hadn't worked out, small details that made him seem less like an untouchable millionaire and more like a regular person. But they didn't talk about race. They didn't talk about the way he'd treated her or the ugly things Ruth had mentioned about his father. They talked around those things, skirting the edges, neither quite ready to dive into the deep water. When visiting hours ended, Marcus asked if she'd come back tomorrow. I work tomorrow, she said. Right, of course. He looked disappointed. But I'm off at 6. I could come after that. His face brightened. I'd like that. She drove home feeling strange. Lighter somehow, but also more confused than ever. She'd spent 8 months hating this man. Now she was voluntarily spending time with him. What was she doing? Monday at the restaurant was tense. Linda watched Ellie like a hawk. Sarah whispered to the other servers. Tom kept giving her concerned looks from the kitchen, but Ellie just did her job, served her tables, kept her head down. After her shift, she went back to the hospital. And again on Tuesday and Wednesday. Each visit, the conversations went deeper. Marcus talked about the pressure of running a business, the weight of expectations. Ellie talked about growing up poor, about her mother's struggles, about the scholarships she'd lost when her mom got sick, and Ellie had to drop out of college to work. On Thursday, Marcus finally brought it up. Ellie, can I ask you something? Sure. That night, when I collapsed, you could have just called 911 and walked away. Hell, you could have left me on the floor. After the way I treated you, no one would have blamed you. I already told you why I helped. I know, but I need to understand. He looked at her intently. How did you do it? How did you look at me, at the man who'd been cruel to you, and choose kindness? Ellie thought about it carefully. My mom used to say that how you treat people when they're helpless says more about you than about them. You were helpless. I wasn't going to let that moment say something ugly about me. Marcus absorbed that. Your mom sounds wise. She was. The past tense still hurt. She died 2 years ago. I'm sorry. They sat quietly for a moment. Marcus, Ellie said slowly, Ruth told me about your father, about the things he believed. His whole body tensed. She told you. Some of it, not details, just enough to help me understand where some of this came from. She met his eyes. But you're not your father. You get to choose who you are. Do I? His voice was bitter. Because right now, lying here, thinking about how I've acted, I'm not sure I've chosen anything. I've just repeated patterns, hurt people without thinking, been exactly what I was taught to be. Then choose different now. It's not that simple. No, Ellie's voice was gentle but firm. It's not simple. It's probably going to be the hardest thing you ever do, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Marcus looked at her with something like wonder. How are you so sure? I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful. And sometimes that's enough. He reached out and took her hand. The touch was tentative, careful. Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a chance I don't deserve. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. But Marcus, you have to actually do the work. Saying you're sorry isn't enough. Feeling guilty isn't enough. You have to change how you act, how you treat people, all people. I know. Do you? Because when you come back to the restaurant, when I come back, he interrupted, things will be different. I promise you that. Don't promise me. Just do it. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. Friday afternoon, the doctors cleared Marcus to go home. Ruth came to pick him up, and he called Ellie to let her know. I'll be back at the restaurant Monday, he said, taking the weekend to rest like the doctors ordered. That's good. Ellie, he paused. I'm nervous. About what? About Monday. About going back. About whether I can actually be the person I told you I'd be. You'll figure it out, one day at a time. Will you be there, Monday? I'm on the schedule. Good. That's good. He sounded relieved. I'll see you then. After they hung up, Ellie sat on her couch and stared at the wall. Monday would be the real test. Anyone could be kind and reflective in a hospital bed. But could Marcus actually change his behavior in the real world? In his own restaurant, surrounded by the staff who'd seen him at his worst? She didn't know, but she'd find out soon enough. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Ellie stood in front of her closet for 10 minutes, staring at her work uniform like it was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Black pants, black shirt, same as always. But somehow, today felt different. Everything felt different. She dressed carefully, tied her hair back, and drove to the restaurant with her stomach in knots. The parking lot was full. Lunch service would start in an hour. She sat in her car for a moment, gathering courage. Through the front windows, she could see movement inside, staff preparing, business as usual. Except it wasn't usual at all. She got out of the car and walked in through the back entrance. The kitchen was already hot, full of the sounds and smells of prep work. Tom looked up from his cutting board. "He's here," Tom said quietly. "Got in about 20 minutes ago." "How does he seem?" "Quiet? Different, maybe, I don't know." Tom wiped his hands on his apron. "Linda's been in his office with him since he arrived. Door closed." Ellie nodded and went to clock in. Her hands shook slightly as she punched her time card. She told herself to breathe, to stay calm, to not expect too much or too little. Just see what happens. She was setting up her station when she heard Marcus's voice. "Good morning, everyone." The whole restaurant seemed to pause. Staff members stopped what they were doing. Customers who'd arrived early looked up from their coffee. Marcus stood near the kitchen doors wearing a simple navy suit instead of his usual sharp designer clothes. He looked thinner than he had a week ago, tired, but his eyes were clear and steady. "I want to thank you all for keeping things running while I was out," he said. His voice was different too, softer, without the edge of command that usually sharpened his words. "Linda tells me you handled everything beautifully." A few murmurs of acknowledgement, everyone still watching, waiting. Marcus's gaze found Ellie across the room. Something passed between them, recognition maybe, or solidarity. She gave him a tiny nod. He seemed to draw strength from it. "I also want to say something." Marcus took a breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past week, about this restaurant, about how I run it, about how I treat the people who work here." He paused. "And I haven't been treating you well. Any of you. I've been demanding and harsh and unfair. That changes today." The silence was thick now, uncomfortable. "I'm not going to make a big speech," Marcus continued. "I'm not going to make promises I might not keep. I'm just going to try to do better, day by day. And if I slip up, when I slip up, I want you to call me on it. You all deserve respect. You've always deserved it." He looked around the room one more time, then headed toward his office. But before he disappeared, he stopped and turned back. "Ellie, could I speak with you for a moment?" Every eye in the restaurant swiveled to her. She felt heat creep up her neck, but kept her expression neutral. "Of course." She followed him to his office. He left the door open. She noticed that detail and appreciated it. Closed doors had meant trouble before. This felt different, more transparent. Marcus sat behind his desk but gestured for her to take the chair across from him. Equal footing, not an employee being called to account. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm okay. How are you feeling?" "Tired, nervous." He gave a rueful smile. "Terrified, if I'm honest." "You did good out there, what you said." "Did I?" He looked uncertain. "I felt like I was fumbling, like nothing I said was enough. It was a start. That's all anyone can ask for." Ellie folded her hands in her lap. "But Marcus, words are easy. It's the actions that matter." "I know." He met her eyes. "That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. I need your help." "My help?" "I need you to hold me accountable. If I slip into old habits, if I'm dismissive or harsh or—" He struggled for the words. "If I'm being the person I was before, I need you to tell me. Right away. Don't let it slide." Ellie studied him carefully. "That's asking a lot. I'm your employee, Marcus. There's a power dynamic here." "I know, but you're also the only person in this building who isn't afraid to be honest with me." He leaned forward slightly. "Ruth would do it, but she's not here every day. You are. And you've already shown me more grace than I deserve. I'm asking for one more thing, honest accountability." She thought about it, about what he was asking. It was risky, uncomfortable. It could blow up in her face if he wasn't serious about changing. But she'd come this far already. "Okay," she said, "but on one condition." "Name it." "If I call you out and you get defensive or angry or try to make me feel bad for speaking up, I'm done. No second chances on that. I won't be punished for telling the truth." Marcus nodded immediately. "Deal. Absolutely. And if I do that, if I react badly, you have my permission to walk out. I'll write you a glowing reference letter myself." Despite everything, Ellie almost smiled. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." "Let's hope not." He stood and she did too. "Thank you, Ellie. For everything. For still being here. One day at a time, right?" "Right. One day at a time." The lunch shift started. Ellie moved through her section, taking orders and delivering food, hyper-aware of Marcus's presence. He wasn't hovering like he used to, wasn't watching her with that critical eye. But she could feel him trying, consciously making an effort to be different. She saw him thank Chris the bartender for something, saw him ask Sarah how her morning had been, actually listening to her answer. Saw him notice when Tom was struggling with a backed-up order and step in to help plate dishes instead of criticizing the delay. Small things, but significant. Around 2 o'clock, when the lunch crowd had thinned, Marcus approached her station. Ellie tensed automatically. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. "Sure. Table 8. He gestured to an older couple who'd just sat down. "Could you take them? I know it's not your section, but I have to make a phone call and—" He stopped himself. "Actually, no, never mind. It's not your section. I'll ask Chris to cover it." "Marcus, I can take the table. It's fine." "No, I'm trying not to just assume you'll pick up my slack." He gave a self-deprecating smile. "See? Still learning?" After he walked away, Ellie stood there for a moment, processing. The old Marcus would have just told her to take the table, not asked. Definitely wouldn't have reconsidered when he realized he was being unfair. Tom appeared beside her. "Did that just happen?" "I think so." "Huh." Tom scratched his chin. Maybe he's serious about this. Maybe. But Ellie kept her guard up. One good day didn't erase 8 months. She needed to see consistency. Proof over time. The week passed in a strange rhythm. Marcus was different, that was undeniable. But it was clear he was working at it. Sometimes he'd catch himself mid-sentence, about to say something sharp, and visibly hold back. Other times he'd correct himself after the fact, apologizing for a tone that had been too harsh. It was awkward, uncomfortable for everyone. The staff didn't quite know how to respond to this new version of their boss. But slowly, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to change. Wednesday afternoon, Ellie was in the kitchen grabbing an order when she overheard Marcus talking to Sarah. "I need you to redo this table setup," he was saying. "The silverware isn't—" He stopped, took a breath. "Actually, you know what? It's fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. I'm being too picky." Sarah stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure. Sorry for interrupting your work." After he left, Sarah turned to Ellie with wide eyes. "Did that really just happen?" Ellie nodded slowly. "It did." "Okay, what did you do to him in that hospital? Cast a spell?" "I didn't do anything. He's just trying to be better." "Well, it's weird." Sarah grabbed her tray. "But good weird, I guess." Thursday brought the first real test. A customer complained about their meal. The fish was overcooked, they said. In the old days, Marcus would have blamed the server who took the order or the cook who made it. He would have found someone to tear down. Ellie watched from across the room as Marcus listened to the complaint, saw him nod, saw him apologize personally, saw him have the kitchen make a replacement without once raising his voice or casting blame. When the customer left happy, Marcus came over to where Tom stood at the kitchen window. "That was on me," Marcus said. "I've been pushing you too hard on ticket times. You felt rushed, and the quality suffered. We need to find a better balance." Tom just stood there, spatula in hand, looking stunned. Okay, thanks for understanding." After Marcus walked away, Tom caught Ellie's eye and mouthed, "What the hell?" She just shrugged, but inside something warm was unfurling. Hope, maybe, or something close to it. Friday evening, after the dinner rush, Marcus asked Ellie to stay a few minutes after her shift. They sat in the dining room with the lights dimmed, the restaurant finally quiet. "How do you think it's going?" he asked. "Be honest." Ellie considered her words carefully. "You're trying. That's clear. Everyone can see it. But it's still new. People are waiting to see if it sticks. If you'll go back to how you were before." Marcus nodded. "I get that. I do, but Ellie, I need you to know something." He looked at her directly. "This isn't an act. This isn't guilt making me perform some version of myself that I'll drop when enough time passes. I'm genuinely trying to become a better person." "I believe you," and she realized she did. "But Marcus, there's still something we haven't talked about." "What?" She took a breath. This was the hard part, the part they'd both been avoiding. "Why you treated me differently than everyone else. Why you were harder on me." The air between them grew heavy. Marcus looked down at his hands. "I know why," he said quietly, "and I'm ashamed of it." "Tell me anyway." He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, His voice was barely above a whisper. "You're a white woman, young, kind, hard-working. Everything my father told me I should value, should respect." He paused. "But you were also working a service job, living paycheck to paycheck. Not the kind of person my father would have seen as worthy of respect, despite your race." Ellie's chest tightened. "And I think," Marcus struggled with the words, "I think I took out all my father's contradictions on you, all the twisted logic he taught me. You deserved respect because of who you are as a person, but my father's voice in my head said you didn't because of where you came from. So I treated you like you were less than, like you didn't matter." "Because I was poor," Ellie said. "Yes. God help me, yes." He looked up at her, his eyes shining. "And I didn't even realize I was doing it until I was lying in that hospital bed, until Ruth spelled it out for me. I thought I'd left my father's racism behind, but I'd just redirected it, found other ways to be cruel, other categories of people to look down on." Ellie felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them back. "At least you're being honest about it." "Honest doesn't make it right." "No, but it's a start." She leaned forward. "Marcus, here's what I need you to understand. I don't just want you to be nicer to me. I need you to look at why you thought it was okay to treat me that way in the first place. To dig into all the stuff your father taught you and really examine it. I'm trying. I know you are. But trying isn't the same as succeeding. You're going to slip up. You're going to catch yourself thinking things you shouldn't. And when that happens, you have to do the hard work of changing your actual thoughts, not just your behavior." Marcus absorbed this. "Will you help me? Will you tell me when you see me falling back into patterns?" "That's what you asked me to do, isn't it?" "It is. But this feels like more than that. This feels like you caring whether I actually change or not." Ellie was quiet for a moment. Did she care? A month ago, she would have said no. Would have said she just wanted to survive her shifts and cash her paychecks. But now? "Yeah," she admitted. "I guess I do care." "Why?" "Because I've seen what you're capable of when you're not being cruel. I've seen you be kind and thoughtful and genuinely concerned about people." She met his eyes. "And because I think you're worth the effort it takes to become better." Something shifted in Marcus's expression, softened. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice hesitant. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Depends on the question. Why did you stay? After that first week when you realized how I was treating you, why didn't you quit?" Ellie thought about it. "I needed the job. The pay here is better than anywhere else in town, and I couldn't afford to leave." "That's all?" "No." She smiled sadly. "I also didn't want to give you the satisfaction. Didn't want you to think you'd broken me. So I stayed out of spite and stubbornness." Marcus actually laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "Spite and stubbornness? I can respect that." "Don't respect it too much. It almost broke me anyway." She stood up. "I should get going. It's late." "Right, of course." Marcus stood too. "Ellie, before you go, would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? Not as boss and employee, just as two people talking." Ellie's heart did something complicated in her chest. "Marcus, I know it's complicated. He ran a hand over his head. "I like talking to you, really talking like we have been, and I'd like to do more of that, outside of this building, but only if you're comfortable with it." She should say no. She knew she should. The power dynamic was still there. The history was still there. Getting personally involved with her boss, her formerly cruel boss, was a terrible idea. But she heard herself say, "Okay. Okay? Coffee. This weekend, maybe. But Marcus, this is just coffee. Just conversation. I'm not promising anything beyond that. I understand. Just coffee." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, made him look younger, lighter. "Thank you." Saturday afternoon found Ellie sitting in a small cafe on Main Street, watching people pass by the window. She'd changed clothes 3 times that morning before settling on jeans and a soft gray sweater. Casual, not like she was trying too hard, even though she definitely was. Marcus arrived exactly on time, wearing dark jeans and a blue button-down. He looked nervous. She realized she liked that, the vulnerability of it. "Hi," he said. Hi. They ordered coffee and found a table in the back corner. For the first few minutes, they made awkward small talk about the weather and the restaurant. But gradually, they fell into easier conversation. Ellie told him about her mother, about how she'd been a nurse, strong and fierce and loving, about the cancer that had come suddenly and taken her too fast, about dropping out of college to take care of her, then staying in this town after she died because it was all Ellie knew. Marcus told her about growing up wealthy but lonely, about his father's impossible standards and cold approval, about learning to build walls around himself to survive his childhood, about his mother leaving when he was young and never coming back. "That's why Ruth is so important to me," he said. "She's the only family I have left who actually cares about me as a person, not as an heir or a success story. She's a special woman." "She is," Marcus smiled. "She was the one who told me to really look at how I was treating you. After the hospital. She sat me down and said, 'That girl saved your life, and you've spent 8 months trying to destroy hers. What kind of man does that make you?'" "Harsh." "True, though." He took a sip of coffee. "She made me see that I'd become exactly what I thought I'd avoided becoming. My father, but with better manners and a nicer suit." Ellie reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. "You're not your father, Marcus. You're choosing something different. With your help." "No, because you decided to. I just happened to be there." They talked for 2 hours, long enough that the barista had to refill their cups twice, long enough that the afternoon light shifted and softened, long enough that Ellie forgot to be nervous and just enjoyed herself. When they finally left the cafe, Marcus walked her to her car. "Thank you for this," he said, "for giving me a chance, for seeing past the person I was." "I'm still seeing," Ellie said, "still figuring you out." "Fair enough." He hesitated, then said, "Could we do this again? Soon?" "Maybe. Let's see how Monday goes." Always testing me. But he said it with warmth, not criticism. Someone has to keep you honest. She drove home with something light and unfamiliar in her chest, something that felt dangerously like happiness. Monday brought another test, a difficult one. One of the regular customers, Mr. Patterson, an older man who'd been coming to Kohl's for years, made a comment to Ellie about the quality of service declining. His tone made it clear he wasn't just talking about the food. Ellie handled it professionally, but when she went to the kitchen to put in his order, her hands were shaking. Tom saw. "What happened?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "Ellie." She told him about the comment, about the way Mr. Patterson had looked at her, the dismissiveness, the edge of contempt. Tom's jaw tightened. "That's not okay." "It's fine. I can handle it." "No, it's not fine." Tom wiped his hands on his apron. "Marcus needs to know about this." "Tom, please don't." But Tom was already heading toward Marcus's office. Ellie followed, her stomach sinking. Tom knocked on the open door. "Marcus, we need to talk about something." Marcus looked up from his computer, saw their faces. "What's wrong?" Tom explained. Marcus's expression darkened with each word. When Tom finished, Marcus stood up immediately. "Which table?" "Marcus, it's really okay," Ellie started. "No." His voice was firm but not harsh. "It's not okay, and I'm not going to let anyone treat my staff that way." "Which table?" 12, Tom said. Ellie watched, her heart in her throat as Marcus walked out to the dining room. She followed at a distance, unable to stop herself. Marcus approached Mr. Patterson's table with that same commanding presence he'd always had, but this time, it wasn't directed at his staff. It was protective of them. "Mr. Patterson," Marcus said, his voice carrying just enough that nearby tables could hear. "I understand you had a complaint about the service." The older man looked up, clearly surprised that the owner was addressing him. "Oh, well, Let me be very clear about something," Marcus interrupted. "Eleanor is one of the best servers we have. She's professional, hardworking, and kind. If you have a problem with your food or your experience, that's one thing. But if your complaint is about her as a person, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Mr. Patterson's face flushed red. "Now, see here. I'm serious. Kohl's doesn't tolerate disrespect toward our staff, not from anyone." Marcus's voice was calm, but absolute. "So you can apologize to Eleanor and we'll move on. Or you can settle your bill and find somewhere else to eat from now on. Your choice." The entire restaurant had gone quiet, everyone watching. Mr. Patterson looked around, realized he had an audience, and seemed to deflate slightly. He turned to Ellie, who stood frozen near the kitchen. "I apologize," he muttered. "That was uncalled for." "Thank you," Ellie managed. Marcus nodded once. "Good. Enjoy your meal, Mr. Patterson." He walked back toward his office, catching Ellie's eye as he passed. There was something fierce in his expression, protective. After he disappeared, the normal noise of the restaurant gradually resumed, but Ellie stood there for a moment longer, processing what had just happened. Marcus had stood up for her, publicly, without hesitation. The old Marcus would have told her to handle it herself, would have, maybe, even suggested she was being too sensitive. This Marcus had drawn a line in the sand. Later, after the lunch shift ended, Ellie found Marcus in his office. "Thank you," she said from the doorway, "for what you did with Mr. Patterson." He looked up. "You don't have to thank me. That's just basic decency. Protecting the people who work for me." Still, it meant something. Marcus set down his pen. "Ellie, I need you to understand something. What I did today, standing up for you, that should be normal. That should be the bare minimum of how I treat you and everyone else who works here. The fact that it feels remarkable is just proof of how badly I failed before. You're not failing now. I'm trying not to," he smiled slightly, "but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize this is too hard and walk away. I'm not walking away. Why not? You could get a job somewhere else, somewhere you don't have to deal with all this baggage." Ellie stepped into the office and closed the door partway. "You want to know why I'm staying? Yes, because I see you trying. I see you doing the hard work. And because—" She paused, surprised by what she was about to say. "Because I like the person you're becoming, the person you are when you're not hiding behind walls." Marcus stood and came around the desk. He stopped a few feet away from her, careful not to invade her space. "I like the person I am around you," he said quietly. "You make me want to be better, to do better. That can't be the only reason you change, Marcus. It has to come from inside you." "It does. You just help me remember why it matters." They stood there, looking at each other. The air between them felt charged, heavy with possibility. Ellie knew she should leave, should maintain professional distance, should protect herself. But she didn't move. "This is complicated," she said. "Very. You're my boss. I know. And we have a lot of history. Bad history. I know that too." Marcus took a small step closer. "But Ellie, I can't stop thinking about you. About who you are. About how you saved my life and then saved me again by believing I could change. Marcus, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just being honest. You said you wanted honesty." She had said that. And now he was giving it to her, and it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "I need time," she said, "to figure this out, to figure out what I want. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." She nodded and turned to leave. But at the door, she stopped and looked back. "For what it's worth," she said, "I can't stop thinking about you either." Then she left before she could see his reaction. She drove home with her heart racing, her mind spinning. This was happening. Something was happening between them, something real and complicated and potentially wonderful or disastrous. She didn't know which, but for the first time in a long time, she was willing to find out. The next 2 weeks passed in a delicate dance. Marcus and Ellie circled each other at work, professional, careful, but with an undercurrent of something more, something neither of them named out loud. Marcus continued changing, not just in big, visible ways, but in small moments that added up. He learned people's names, not just the servers and managers, but the dishwashers, the busboys, the delivery drivers. He asked about their lives, their families, actually listened to the answers. He started arriving earlier and staying later, working alongside the staff instead of just directing them. Ellie watched him chop vegetables with Tom, his expensive suit jacket hung carefully in his office. Watched him help Chris reorganize the bar inventory, laughing at a joke the bartender made. Watched him thank Sarah for covering an extra shift, his gratitude genuine and specific. The staff's wariness began to soften. Not completely. Trust took time. But the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted from tense to cautiously optimistic. And through it all, Ellie felt Marcus's eyes on her. Not the critical, measuring gaze from before, something warmer. Something that made her skin tingle and her heart race. She wasn't ready to name what she felt in return, not yet, but it was there, growing steadily like spring flowers pushing through frozen ground. On a Wednesday evening, 2.5 weeks after their coffee date, the restaurant faced an unexpected crisis. The main oven broke down during dinner rush. The kitchen descended into controlled chaos as Tom tried to manage with just the stovetop and the backup equipment. Orders backed up, customers grew impatient, the staff's carefully rebuilt confidence began to crack. Ellie was in the middle of explaining yet another delay to a frustrated table when she heard raised voices from the kitchen. She hurried back to find Tom and Marcus in what looked like the beginning of an argument. "Can't do it with half the equipment," Tom was saying, his face flushed with stress. "I've got 20 orders and nowhere to cook them." The old Marcus would have snapped back, would have blamed Tom for not managing better, would have made everything worse. This Marcus took a breath, then another. "You're right," he said. "This isn't your fault. Let me think." He pulled out his phone and made 3 quick calls. Within 20 minutes, he'd arranged for the Italian place down the street to handle their pasta orders, the steakhouse 2 blocks over to cook their meat dishes, and a repair technician to come first thing in the morning. "Tell the customers the truth," Marcus said to the staff. "Kitchen emergency. We're working with partner restaurants to fill orders, offer them a free appetizer for the wait. Anyone who doesn't want to wait, comp their drinks and give them a gift card for next time." It wasn't perfect. Some customers left, but most stayed, charmed by the honesty and the effort to make things right. Marcus worked the floor himself that night, explaining the situation, apologizing, even delivering food from the partner restaurants when their delivery arrived. Ellie watched him handle a particularly angry customer with patience and grace, never once raising his voice or making excuses. By the time they closed, everyone was exhausted. But there was something else too, a sense of having survived a crisis together, as a team. After the last customer left and the staff had cleaned up, Marcus gathered everyone in the dining room. "Tonight was a disaster," he said. "But you all handled it like professionals, better than professionals. You handled it like people who actually care about this place and each other." He looked around at their tired faces. "I'm proud of you. All of you. Thank you." It was a simple speech, but it meant something. Ellie could see it in the way people smiled, the way the tension finally drained from their shoulders. "Go home," Marcus said. "Get some rest, and tomorrow we start with a fully functioning kitchen." As people filed out, Marcus caught Ellie's arm gently. "Can you stay a minute?" She nodded. Tom gave her a knowing look as he left, but she ignored it. When they were alone, Marcus sank into a chair and rubbed his face. "That was intense. You handled it well. We handled it well. All of us." He looked up at her. "A month ago, I would have lost my mind. Probably screamed at Tom, definitely blamed someone. But tonight you were a leader instead of a boss. Is there a difference?" "A big one." Ellie sat down across from him. "A boss tells people what to do. A leader shows them how to do it and works alongside them." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "My father was a boss. A demanding, unforgiving boss. I spent my whole life watching him run his businesses that way. I thought that's what strength looked like. It's not. No, it's not." He leaned back in his chair. "Real strength is admitting when you're wrong, asking for help, treating people with dignity even when things are falling apart. You're learning, because you're teaching me." His eyes found hers. "Ellie, I need to tell you something." Her heart started beating faster. "Okay. I know we said we'd take things slow, that we'd see how work went before we figured out whatever this is between us." He gestured between them. "But I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel, and I don't want to wait anymore to tell you. Marcus, let me finish, please." He leaned forward. "You changed my life, not just by saving it, but by showing me what kind of person I could be, what kind of person I should be. And somewhere along the way, I fell for you. Completely. Terrifyingly. Fell for your kindness and your strength and the way you refused to let me get away with being anything less than honest." Ellie's breath caught. She'd known this was coming, had felt it building. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified her. "I don't expect you to say it back," Marcus continued. "I know this is complicated. I know I hurt you for months before I ever earned the right to feel this way. But I needed you to know. I needed to be honest." She looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man who'd been cruel and was learning kindness, who'd been closed off and was learning to open up, who'd had every advantage in life but was only now learning what actually mattered. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Of me? Of this. Of letting myself care about you and then having you go back to who you were. Of being wrong about whether people can really change." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's fair. That's more than fair. I can't promise I won't mess up. I probably will. But I can promise that I'll keep trying. That I won't give up on being better. What if I'm not enough to keep you motivated? What if the novelty wears off and you realize you like the old version of yourself better? That won't happen. You don't know that. You're right. I don't." He reached across the table and took her hand. "But Ellie, I know this. The old version of myself was miserable, lonely, angry at the world. I don't want to go back to that. Even if you decided tomorrow that you wanted nothing to do with me, I still wouldn't go back. Because I finally like the person I see in the mirror." Tears pricked at Ellie's eyes. She blinked them back. "I care about you too, more than I should, probably. More than is smart." "Yeah?" "Yeah," she squeezed his hand. "But Marcus, I need more time. I need to see that this version of you is real, that it lasts. Not just weeks, but months. I need to trust that you won't hurt me again." "How long?" "I don't know. As long as it takes." He absorbed this, then nodded. "Okay, I can wait. However long you need." "You say that now. I mean it." His voice was firm. "You're worth waiting for. This, whatever we could be together, is worth waiting for." They sat there in the quiet restaurant, hands clasped across the table, both of them aware they were standing at the edge of something significant, something that could either be wonderful or heartbreaking. Ellie didn't know which way it would go, but for the first time, she was willing to find out. The following Saturday, Ruth invited Ellie to lunch. They met at a small bistro on the outskirts of town, neutral territory, not Marcus's restaurant. Ruth ordered a salad and sparkling water. Ellie got soup and tea. They made small talk for a few minutes before Ruth got to the point. "How are you doing? Really doing?" Ellie set down her spoon. "I don't know how to answer that." "Try." "I'm confused, hopeful, terrified, all at the same time." Ellie wrapped her hands around her warm mug. 3 weeks ago, I hated Marcus. Now I'm falling for him. That's not normal." "No," Ruth agreed. "It's not. But then again, nothing about this situation is normal." "Does that worry you?" "Should it?" Ellie thought about it. "I don't know. You know him better than anyone. Is this real? Or is this just guilt making him act a certain way until he feels like he's paid his debt?" Ruth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I've known Marcus since he was born, watched him grow up in my brother's shadow, watched him build walls around his heart to survive his childhood, and I've watched him take those walls down, brick by brick, over the past few weeks. Because he almost died." "That started it," Ruth acknowledged. "But you're what's keeping it going. You make him want to be better." "That's what scares me. What if I'm not enough? What if the shine wears off?" Ruth reached across the table and covered Ellie's hand with hers. "Eleanor, listen to me. Change that comes from fear of death is shallow. It fades when the fear fades. But change that comes from genuine self-reflection and accountability. That's deep. That's real. And that's what I see in Marcus. How can you be sure? Because I've watched him struggle. I've listened to him question himself at 2 a.m, wondering if he's capable of being the person you believe he can be. I've seen him angry at himself for thoughts he can't control yet, the old patterns trying to reassert themselves, and every time, he chooses better. Not because he's afraid of losing you, though I think that motivates him too, but because he genuinely hates who he used to be." Ellie felt tears sting her eyes again. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it, but also protect yourself. Take your time. Make him prove it. Ruth's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't owe him anything, Eleanor. Not forgiveness, not love, nothing. Whatever you give him should be freely chosen, and if you choose to walk away, that's valid too." "I don't want to walk away." "Then don't, but don't rush either. Let this unfold naturally. Let him earn your trust the way any person should, through consistent, sustained change over time." They finished lunch, talking about other things. Ruth told stories about Marcus as a child, sweet, sensitive, desperate for approval he never got. Ellie shared more about her mother, about the life they'd built together, before cancer took it all away. By the time they parted, Ellie felt steadier, less afraid. Ruth had given her permission to hope without rushing, to stay without surrendering her self-protection. It was exactly what she needed. 3 days later, on a Tuesday evening after the dinner rush, Marcus asked Ellie if she'd like to take a walk with him. Not a date, just a walk. Fresh air after hours in the restaurant. They walked through the downtown area, past shops closing for the night, and restaurants still glowing with activity. The October air was cool, carrying the smell of fall leaves and wood smoke. For a while, they didn't talk, just walked side by side, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. What made you give me a second chance? After everything I did, why didn't you just quit and never look back?" Ellie thought about it. She'd asked herself the same question many times. I think it was something my mom used to say. She'd tell me that everyone has the capacity for change, but not everyone chooses it. And when someone actually chooses it, when they do the hard work of becoming better, they deserve support. Your mom sounds like she was an incredible person." "She was," Ellie smiled sadly. "She worked in hospice care for years, saw people at their worst and their best. She said the end of life had a way of showing you who people really were underneath all the pretense. Some people got bitter, but some people found grace. Is that what you think happened to me? I found grace. I think you were forced to look at yourself without all the armor and didn't like what you saw, and then you chose to change it. That takes courage." Marcus stopped walking. They'd reached the town square, where a fountain burbled softly in the darkness. He turned to face her. "I need to tell you something else," he said. "Something I haven't told anyone except Ruth." "Okay." "When I was lying on that floor, when I thought I was dying, my biggest regret wasn't the business deals I hadn't closed or the success I hadn't achieved. It was you." His voice was rough with emotion. "It was thinking about how I'd treated you, how I'd made you feel small when you deserved to feel valued. That's what haunted me. Not my father's disappointment or my own failures, just you. The look on your face every time I tore you down." Ellie felt tears slide down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. "And then you saved me anyway," Marcus continued. "You showed me a kindness I'd never shown you. And I realized that if I survived, if I got another chance, I had to become someone who deserved that kindness, not just for you, for myself, because I couldn't live with being the person who'd hurt you and never made it right." "Marcus, I love you, Ellie." The words came out simple and sure. "I know it's too soon. I know I don't have the right, but I love you. The way you see the world, the way you give people chances they don't deserve, the way you're strong and soft at the same time. I love all of it. I love you." Ellie stood there in the darkness, the fountain splashing behind them, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. She knew what she should say. She should say it was too soon, too complicated, that she needed more time. But standing there, looking at this man who'd been cruel and was learning gentleness, who'd been closed and was learning to open his heart, she realized something. She loved him too, despite everything, despite the history and the hurt and the impossibility of it all. She loved him. "I love you too," she whispered. Marcus's expression transformed. "You do?" "I do. And it terrifies me. But I do." He stepped closer, moving slowly like he was afraid she'd bolt. "Can I kiss you?" She nodded. He cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her. It was soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, They were both breathing hard. "What do we do now?" Ellie asked. "I don't know. Figure it out together?" "That sounds impossible." "Probably," Marcus smiled, "but I'm willing to try if you are." Ellie thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The collapse, the hospital, the slow, painful work of change, all the small moments that had added up to something neither of them had expected. "Okay," she said. "Let's try." The next few weeks weren't easy. Loving Marcus didn't erase the complexity of their situation. He was still her boss. The power dynamic was still there. And though he was genuinely changing, the process wasn't linear. There were hard days, days when old patterns tried to reassert themselves, days when Marcus caught himself about to say something cutting and had to physically stop himself, days when Ellie saw flashes of the old him and felt her guard go back up. But there were good days too. Days when Marcus surprised her with his thoughtfulness, days when he stood up for his staff against difficult customers, days when she saw him treat everyone, from the dishwashers to the town mayor, with equal respect and dignity. He started seeing a therapist, working through the lessons his father had taught him, unpacking decades of toxic beliefs. It was hard work. Sometimes he came back from sessions emotionally raw, struggling with revelations about himself. But he kept going, kept pushing himself to be better. One evening in early November, about 6 weeks after his heart attack, Marcus called a staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the dining room after closing, curious and slightly nervous. Marcus stood in front of them, looking more relaxed than Ellie had ever seen him. "I wanted to tell you all something," he said. "When I started this restaurant 5 years ago, I thought success meant control. Demanding perfection, never showing weakness. I thought that's what leadership looked like." People shifted in their seats, listening. I was wrong. Leadership isn't about control. It's about service. It's about creating an environment where people can do their best work because they feel valued and respected. And I failed at that, badly, for a long time. Tom caught Ellie's eye and raised his eyebrows. She gave him a small smile. "I can't undo the past," Marcus continued, "but I can commit to doing better going forward. So here's what's changing. Effective immediately, everyone's getting a raise, not a small one, a real one that reflects the value you bring to this place. We're also implementing profit sharing. When the restaurant does well, you all benefit." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. "Additionally, I'm hiring an assistant manager to handle day-to-day operations. That means I'll have more time to focus on making this a place people actually want to work, not just a place they have to work." Marcus looked around at their faces. "You all deserve better than what I've given you. I'm going to spend every day trying to earn the loyalty you've shown me. That's my commitment to you." After the meeting ended and people filed out talking excitedly, Marcus found Ellie. "What did you think?" he asked. "I think you meant every word." "I did. And I think you're becoming the man I always hoped you could be." He pulled her into a hug, right there in the middle of the restaurant where anyone could see. Ellie let herself relax into it, feeling safe in a way she'd never felt before. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, "for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for choosing to change." December arrived with cold rain and early darkness. The restaurant was busy with holiday parties and celebrations. Ellie and Marcus navigated their relationship carefully, professional at work, personal outside of it. Some of the staff had figured it out. Tom definitely knew, though he never said anything directly. Just gave Ellie knowing looks and made sure she and Marcus were never scheduled to close alone together. "We're not very good at hiding it, are we?" Ellie asked Marcus one evening when they were having dinner at his place. "Probably not," he smiled. "Does that bother you?" "A little. I don't want people to think I'm getting special treatment." "Are you getting special treatment?" "You know I'm not." "Then people can think what they want." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "Ellie, I love you. I'm not interested in hiding that. But I also respect that you work for me, and that needs to be handled carefully. So what do you want to do?" She thought about it. "I want to be honest, not make a big announcement, but not hide either. If people ask, we tell them the truth. And if people have a problem with it, then we deal with it. Together." Marcus lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. Together. I like the sound of that. That weekend, they went to Ruth's house for Sunday dinner. It felt significant somehow, meeting family, being official, stepping into a future neither of them had planned but both wanted. Ruth welcomed Ellie with a warm hug and a knowing smile. Over pot roast and vegetables, they talked about the restaurant, the holidays, life in general. It felt easy, natural. After dinner, while Marcus was helping with dishes, Ruth pulled Ellie aside. "He's different with you," Ruth said quietly. "Lighter, more himself than I've seen him in years. He's done the work. I just supported him. Don't diminish your role in this. You saved his life twice, once on that floor and once by believing he could change." Ruth squeezed Ellie's arm. "Thank you for seeing past the armor to the good man underneath. Thank you for raising a man who was capable of change." That night, driving home through the December rain, Marcus reached over and took Ellie's hand. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Ellie's heart jumped. "What?" "Move in with me. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months, but, Ellie, I don't want to spend another night without you. I want to wake up next to you, fall asleep talking to you, build a life with you." "Marcus, I'm not asking for forever. Not yet. Just asking if you'll take this next step with me." Ellie looked at him, at this man who'd been everything wrong and was becoming everything right, at the life they were building together, brick by careful brick. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll move in with you." His smile could have lit up the whole car. Christmas came. Ellie's first Christmas without her mother had been unbearably lonely. This one was different. She and Marcus spent Christmas Eve at the restaurant, serving a special menu to families who didn't have anywhere else to go. They worked side by side, dishing up plates and refilling drinks, making sure everyone felt welcome and cared for. On Christmas morning, they woke up in Marcus's bed, their bed now, and exchanged simple gifts. He gave her a necklace with a small silver compass. "So you always find your way," he said. She gave him a framed photo of the two of them laughing together, taken by Tom at the restaurant. "So you remember why you chose to change," she said. They spent the afternoon at Ruth's, eating too much and laughing until their sides hurt. It felt like family, like belonging. That evening, back at home, they sat on the couch watching snow fall outside the window. Marcus had his arm around Ellie's shoulders. She had her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, that same heart that had nearly stopped beating just 3 months ago. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said. "Okay. I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of waking up one day and realizing this is all a dream, that I'll go back to being the person I was, that I'll hurt you again." His voice was quiet, vulnerable. "I'm scared I'm not actually capable of sustaining this change." Ellie sat up and looked at him. "Do you want to hurt me?" "God, no. Do you miss who you used to be?" "Not for a second." "Then you won't go back." She touched his face gently. "Marcus, change isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every single day. Some days will be harder than others. You'll slip up sometimes. We both will. But as long as you keep choosing better, you won't go back to who you were." "How are you so sure?" "Because I know you now, the real you, and the real you is kind and thoughtful and brave enough to face your own demons." She kissed him softly. "I believe in you. I believe in us." Marcus pulled her close, holding her like she was precious, like she was everything. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Maybe not, but you're working hard to deserve me, and that's enough." They sat. There, as the snow fell and the world outside grew quiet and white. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. Two people who'd chosen love over hurt, hope over bitterness, change over comfort. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real. January brought new beginnings. Marcus officially promoted Tom to head chef, giving him the autonomy to build the kitchen the way he'd always dreamed. He hired 2 assistant managers to share the operational burden. And he started taking Sundays off, a day to rest and spend time with Ellie away from the restaurant. The staff had fully embraced the new Marcus, not because they had forgotten who he used to be, but because they had witnessed his sustained commitment to being better. Trust had been rebuilt one day at a time. One Saturday evening in late January, Almost exactly 4 months after his heart attack, Marcus closed the restaurant early. He told the staff there was a small plumbing issue that needed to be addressed. Only Tom and Ruth knew the truth. He'd arranged for the dining room to be decorated simply: candles, white flowers, soft music. He'd ordered food from the kitchen, not fancy, just their favorite dishes, simple and meaningful. When Ellie arrived for her shift and found the locked door, Marcus was there to let her in. "What's going on?" she asked. "Come inside." She saw the decorated dining room and stopped. "Marcus, I need to ask you something," he said, "and I wanted to do it here, where it all started, where you saved my life, where I started learning what it means to be worthy of you." "You don't have to. Please, let me say this." He took her hands. "4 months ago, I was dying, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. I'd built walls so high I couldn't see over them anymore. I'd learned to hurt people before they could hurt me. I'd become my father's son in all the worst ways." Tears were already streaming down Ellie's face. "And then you saved me. Not just my life, but my soul. You showed me what grace looks like, what love looks like, what it means to be truly human." He got down on one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I know it's soon. I know we're still figuring things out. But Ellie, I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're mine and I'm yours. Will you marry me?" Ellie looked at him, at this man who'd been broken and was healing, who'd been lost and had found his way home, at the life they'd built together from the ashes of something terrible. "Yes," she said through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They held each other in the quiet restaurant, surrounded by candles and memories and hope. "I love you," Marcus whispered. "I'll spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." "You already are," Ellie said. "You already are." The restaurant was closed for a private event. The dining room had been transformed with flowers and lights and rows of chairs facing a simple altar. Friends and family filled the seats. Ruth in the front row, Tom standing up as Marcus's best man, Sarah and the rest of the staff scattered throughout. Ellie walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, carrying a bouquet of her mother's favorite flowers. She'd never felt more beautiful or more sure of anything in her life. Marcus stood at the altar, tears already streaming down his face. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "Thank you for saving my life." "Thank you for choosing to change it," she whispered back. They said their vows, promises to choose each other every day, to be honest and kind, to grow together through whatever came. When the officiant pronounced them married, the room erupted in cheers. At the reception, Tom gave a toast. "I've known Marcus for 6 years," he said, "and I've known Ellie for almost 2. When I think about how they started, well, let's just say I never would have predicted this, but watching them fall in love has been watching something impossible become inevitable." Marcus became the man he was always meant to be. Ellie found the courage to believe in second chances, and together they proved that love can grow in the most unlikely places. Ruth spoke next. "My nephew was lost for a long time, but Ellie didn't just find him. She showed him how to find himself. That's the greatest gift one person can give another." As the evening wore on, Ellie and Marcus danced to soft music in the center of the restaurant where, just over a year ago, he'd collapsed and she'd caught him. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked. "How far we've come, how different everything is." "Better different?" "The best different," she smiled up at him. "I'm proud of you, you know, of who you've become. I'm proud of us, of what we built together." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing something in me worth saving. Thank you for doing the work to become that person." They swayed together, surrounded by people who loved them, in a place that had witnessed both their worst and their best moments. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better than that. It was a real beginning. The start of a life built on choice and change and love that had been earned, brick by brick, day by day. And that was the most beautiful thing of all. The end.